Hello everyone, I'm Charime and Canyazares. You can call me Chai. I recently took the Philippine Nurses Licensure Examination last November 2024, and I am thrilled to share to you guys that I actually passed and even topped the board examination. Placing first. The journey was really a roller coaster of challenges, determination, and growth, and I owe much of my success to the study techniques and tips that I have learned and developed during my review season, and that is why I am here today in this video to share to you guys my experience and help you as well in gearing up for your own success as well. In this video, I will be walking you through my preparation tips, study routine, essential review resources, and the mindset that helped me stay focused and motivated until the examination day. So if you are aiming to pass your examination and even top your board examination, stick around and let's dive right into it. Okay, so this episode is entitled Let's Talk Nursing with Chai RN. The flow will be as follows. Okay, so I'll first share about my daily schedule during the review season, followed by my study schedule accordingly. Next, I'll discuss my study flow and then the techniques I use and some study tips. I'll also share what I did before the review season and what I did before the PNLE. I divided this section into two because the review season requires a different preparation compared to the PNLE, and then I'll cover some time management techniques that actually worked for me and then the study materials I used during my review. Okay, so let me start with my daily schedule during the review season. Just a quick introduction lang no of how I designed my daily schedule. I tailored it to match the schedule of the exam. What do I mean by that? I made an effort to program my body clock since the way I used to study before is very different to how I studied during the review season. I made an effort to program my body clock so that my body and brain would be or would get used to the exam's timing. So if you were once a night owl like me when it comes to studying, it's a good idea no to consider changing your study schedule during the review season to that of the schedule during the PNLE. It's one of the best advice I got from one of my clinical instructors during college and also the lecturers from my review center because it really made sense no na you have to adjust your body clock according to the exams timing. But here's a thing lang that I would like to this is just my opinion lang and it's one thing I would like to share. You don't really have to change your routine. The exam is just 2 days, and I believe that we're all capable of adjusting our body clocks within that short time, especially when it's something as important as the board exam, diba? But for me, I decided lang to take the risk and to change my study schedule to fit the exam schedule, and it worked out for me, Ramansad. And if you feel that switching your routine might not work for you, that's okay too. Listen to your body. If studying at an hour different from your usual schedule leaves you feeling foggy or groggy, it's totally fine to stick with what works for you. The most important thing is to do what feels best for you as long as you're not compromising your health along the way. At the end of the day, Mansad, it's all about finding what works and making sure you're healthy and ready to take on the exam, no matter what schedule you follow. Just a confession lang, personally, during the first week I tried to change my schedule according to the exam's timing. I couldn't really focus, like my brain was really groggy, it was really foggy because I wasn't used to studying at daytime. I was used to studying at dawn, usually late at night. That ara ko maanad og study. I was used to studying like that. I'm sorry, I'm not really good with Tagalog. This is just a confession lang that during the first week, I really had a hard time changing my schedule, my study schedule. But eventually, my body, my brain got used to it. So I would say it really is a risk if you do it. Okay. So that's it. That's just it. That's just an opinion and a suggestion. Let's start now. So I will give you a quick overview of how my daily life went during the review season. So I made it a point to have an hour of exercise daily here. And when it comes to exercising, my maximum was just 1 hour. And I made sure to really exercise daily, at least 30 minutes. So the hour I allotted for exercise was including na the preparation for the exercise proper until the cool down exercises. So as long as I had at least 30 minutes of exercise, I considered it good enough na. And I also made sure to dedicate 12 hours for studying. 12 hours, which was already my maximum na here. My minimum was 8 hours. So I usually didn't extend to the full 12 hours and I average around 10 hours daily, which was enough for me. Take note ha, my lecture hours in our review center were already included in my study hours. So that is why it was very easy for me to use up my 8 hour of studying, which is the minimum, because we had 8 hours of lecture daily. During the review season, 8 hours of my study time went to passive listening. Passive listening is the study technique I used during lecture time. And then because of that, because I knew that passive listening would take most of my day when it comes to studying, I made an extra effort to turn passive listening into an active one, into active learning, which I'll explain in a while later when we discuss about study techniques na. And also, I want to highlight this one. This is very important. I also prioritize sleep during the review season. I allotted a minimum of 7 hours. I researched mansad and found that 7 hours is already enough for my age group. I'm in my early 20s. So, technically, 6 hours is already acceptable for our age group. But personally, if I only have 6 hours of sleep, no, I feel really groggy and foggy the next day. So, my minimum really is 7 hours, Jude. And actually, I would say the review season is really different from college, because in college it's very inevitable no to sacrifice sleep, but in review it's kind of, when it comes to your sleeping hours, it's kind of flexible. It's kind of a better situation than college, I would say. And then I would like to highlight also one misconception during the review season is that you'll have sleepless nights. That's not true. Remember, it's a different environment from college, as I mentioned before. Endless sleepless nights are neither healthy, and also they are unnecessary, Jude. If you choose to review for 5 to 6 months like me, or 3 to 4 months, or even lesser than that, you really have to prioritize your sleep. 1 month to review, 1 month before the PNLE is already cramming, so you really have to kanang sacrifice your sleep if you chose to review a month before the board examination. But for those who had the luxury to study 5 to 6 months or 3 to 4 months before the PNLE, no need not to sacrifice your sleep. And preparing for the board examination really is taxing. I would like to say that it really is taxing. And to get through the entire review season until the exam day, you really need to prioritize your sleep. You have to get enough rest. You have to get enough sleep. Otherwise, you won't be able to leverage your brain's fullest potential when it comes to studying and when it comes to acing the board exam. So enough sleep, full potential of your brain, you'll ace the board exam. And that's why during the review season, you have to really work hard and learn as much as you can during the day. And I mentioned work hard, no, but that is very different from studying hard. Let's separate that, because I will explain later. And during your review season, you should not really study hard, but you should actually study wisely. No, study wisely, not hard. Study hard, it only applies during college lang. You study hard because it's more comprehensive. But during the review season, you only have limited time to compact what you have learned during your 4 years in college in just 5 to 6 months, 3 to 4 months. So you don't really have enough time to study hard. You actually need to study smarter, study wisely, and you have to use study techniques and time management techniques for that, which I'll be mentioning later. Okay, so let's continue. Okay. Okay, enough of that, enough of my introduction. That's it. 1 hour exercise daily, 12 hours studying daily, 7 hours sleep daily. So that's the summary of my daily schedule during the review season. So let's start really with my daily schedule proper, huh? Let me zoom out. Okay. Okay, here it is. So this is just a breakdown of what I do every day, of what I did every day during the review season. So I use time blocking as my main time management technique. So I start my day at 5 a.m. and immediately after I wake up, I pray. I don't care what position, I'd be lying down or I'd be sitting up. It doesn't matter as long as I pray. And then I meditate. I really tried to meditate, during the review season to calm my nerves because I've been diagnosed with anxiety disorder. That's why it's very important for me to calm my nerves. I also have palpitations. That's why I really need to calm myself down every day. Otherwise, I'll be stressing my heart. Okay. That's already personal, but yeah, I'm sharing that. And I meditated, I do exercise, shower, do my skincare routine, and have breakfast. So that's actually my morning routine before I study. That is my one way of overcoming procrastination. I have a routine because if I don't follow a routine, there is a higher chance for me to, you know, procrastinate. That's why I do routine to overcome my procrastination, my urge to procrastinate. Because actually, procrastination, it's very inevitable. That's why you have to. I always say this: you have to procrastinate wisely. If you choose to procrastinate, do something that is productive. Do something that will promote personal growth. And this is my way of doing that. To do routines, to do morning routines, to do evening routines before I study, just so I could overcome my procrastination. Okay, and then I mentioned that was my morning routine, right? So I study at 7 a.m. That's the time I already start studying. If our lecture on that day, usually our lectures start at 8 a.m., it's no problem for me. I just begin studying at 7 a.m. It doesn't matter what I do, whether it's reviewing my flashcards or practicing questions, as long as I am engaging my brain to learn by that time. It's kind of like a warm up already for my brain cells before the lecture proper, because lecture propers are kind of very exhausting, no? So I really have to do warm up with my brain cells. And then I usually have lunch at noon, but that varies, especially during lectures. Then I study again from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and then have dinner at 5 p.m., dinner for an hour, and then study again at 6 p.m. I usually study after our lecture. I usually study 2 hours, an average of 2 hours after dinner. And after that, I go through my evening routine before sleeping. So I do skincare, journaling, praying, and then sleep. This is actually my motivation to study my evening routine, because in order for me to go through my evening routine, the key to that is to finish what I need to study. So I really work hard to finish what I need to study in order for me to go through my evening routine. Because my evening routine, it includes not just these skincare activities, not just these journaling activities, but it also includes recreational activities like TV shows, sitcoms, American sitcoms that I want to watch. During the review season, I actually rewatched my favorite American sitcom, which was Big Bang Theory, and I also finished at the time. I think I finished Young Sheldon, and I think I watched also Bridgerton at that time when the new season came up. Also, Emily in Paris, when the new season came up while reviewing. I watched those and I finished those seasons as well while reviewing. And I will tell you how I finish it while still focusing on my studies. Okay, it was my way of procrastinating. Again, if you cannot really overcome procrastinating, if you cannot really overcome procrastination, procrastinate wisely, procrastinate with limitations. That's it. Because it's one way, manggod, to relieve your anxiety, and it's very important to relieve your anxiety before you study, because you have to be calm. Of course, mild anxiety works well with studying, or works well with answering an examination. But if you're too anxious already, if there's a lot going through your mind, you have to calm yourself down first. Okay, where was I was speaking about evening routine. So This schedule, the one I have here, this is just the same from Monday to Saturday because I have the same schedule from Monday to um, Saturday because my rest day is Sunday. So for Sundays, I have a different schedule since it's Sabbath day. So I make it my rest day. However, I do ensure that I have at least 2 hours or even less of studying. Why? I will explain that later. On Sundays, I only do Anki flashcards or practice questions. Why? Because I get anxious if I do not do anything on that day. I get anxious. Like, I feel really restless. I feel guilty when I do not study on Sunday, even if it's my rest day. So that's like, in order to relieve my anxiety, I would just study. I would just allot time, even just at least 2 hours or even less to study just to relieve my anxiety. Because if I do not, then I would become even more anxious. Then I would be stressed na during my rest day, and I would be feeling even more tired, and I was supposed to rest that day. So I just do what I can do to relieve my anxiety. So I study. That's one way to relieve my anxiety. So I study in a way na it's not very stressful for me. I study in a way that it seems like I'm not studying at all. So what I do is I do flashcards or whatever floats my boat on that day. It's either I would do rationalization like this, talking to myself, trying to explain, trying to imagine myself explaining in front of many people about a certain topic. That's what I do. It's like studying, but in a way that I enjoy, in a way that I'm not stressing over, like that, just to relieve my anxiety during my rest day. So again, what I'm saying is, do what works best for you and always have a rest day during your review season. So do whatever helps relieve anxiety and stress from the review season. So if you're someone you'll be more stressed if you study on your rest day, then don't study at all. Do everything, do whatever you want. Watch, go to cinemas, go out with your friends, go to beaches in the north and the south, whatever. Just do anything that relieves your anxiety during your rest day, and you'll be doing great now on the next day, which is Monday. Okay, so again, do what works best for you. One more thing, I created this schedule, this whole schedule here that I am showing you. I created this to have an organized plan, a guide to help me be less stressed about how to go about my day, like less stressed about thinking about what to do next. So really, one way to relieve my anxiety was to make this schedule. But mind you, you don't really have to strictly follow your routine nor schedule like this if you make one. In my case, I made sure to be flexible with it. I wasn't strict about doing things on time, reaching the hours I set, or even doing things in chronological order. That I wasn't worried about that. That didn't matter at that time. What mattered to me was simply I had I had this guide to guide me, and that's enough for me. I don't really have to follow it strictly, because if I follow it strictly, I would be even more stressed in following it strictly. So I just, I was very flexible with it. So that's also an advice I would like to give you na be flexible with your routine, be flexible with your schedule. Do not really strict about no. So you have to be disciplined, but do not be rigid. Just be flexible, because if you're stressed for a long time, good, it's not good for your body, diba? The hormones and stuff, what it does to your body in a prolonged time, it's not good. It will not do you good in the long run. So it would be better to have less stress, diba? Even during the review season. And then, also, if you're like me, you're the kind of person who gets gratification from checking things off a checklist, or clicking done like this, like that. You find gratification after a long day's work of clicking done. You're already happy. Then crafting a daily routine table like this will definitely help you. I'm telling you, and it's something that you look forward to every day. Just choosing the done, seeing the red button, like that. And then also, just a confession lang po, I used Google Sheets because it was easier for me to manipulate. I wanted to use Notion so bad, but I don't know how to use the algorithms, all the formulas. I don't know how to use it. But right now, I'm learning how to do it. It's just that it's very hard for me to use it. It would take time. So I just choose Google Sheets during my review season. Actually, you can actually turn Google Sheet just the same with Notion. I learned that somehow, but I don't know how to do it. I just had the idea that you can do it, but I don't know how to do it. But I will learn how to do it because of the aesthetics. It's very calming just looking at it. But I didn't have aesthetics at that time. Just look at my look at my presentation here. It's very boring, it's very simple, but it's okay, it worked naman said, so no problem. That's why now I'm finally learning how to use Notion. So if you have any tips on how to use Notion, comment down below, please. Okay. Okay, now that I've given you an overview of my daily schedule during the review season, let me dive into my specific study schedule on a daily basis. So here it is. This is my specific, the one I showed you earlier was my daily study schedule in a more general way. But now let's dive into the specific study schedule that I made myself every week during the review season. Okay, so the main time management technique I really used was time blocking for studying and for my daily routine. So what topics did I study per week? The answer is it really depended on our lecture schedule. No, I depended on the schedule given by our review center. And I simply followed the topics given by the review center because one of the reasons I enrolled was to lessen the burden of creating my own study schedule. That's it, was to have a guide. That was the main reason why I enrolled in a review center. One of the main reasons. So I just followed what the schedule that they gave us. Okay, so during the first week, I just like to share lang what I'll be presenting here in the screen. I'll be presenting the schedule I had, the study schedule I had for the first week of our review season. And then the second week, I'll also be sharing because on the second week, our schedules for our lectures were already established, and that is basically just the same during the succeeding weeks of our review season. We're more on lecture, and also I'll be sharing to you guys my schedule during mock boards because I have different things going on when it comes to those things during the review season, during lectures, during rationalizations, during examinations, different things going on in my life in those days. The same routine, the same time blocking, but different, I would say, different events, I would say. So during the first week, we focus primarily on pretest. So on orientation day, we were given a set of pretests. So if you're enrolled in SLRC, you would know, if you enrolled and if you will enroll, you would know how it's like during the first season of your proper Judna review for the PNLE. So on our orientation, we were given a set of pretests, and that's what I worked on throughout the week, June. It was a total of 1,200 questions, I think, and I finished that within a week. So the schedule was quite flexible, but I made sure to create my own structured plan because on that week I really wanted to finish na all the pre-tests because on the succeeding week I wanted to really focus more on studying, like deep studying for the PNLE na. So, if you can hear that, I'm sorry. Okay, let's continue. I decided to dedicate the entire first week here, as you can see here, I dedicated it to pretest and set a goal of finishing 1,200 board examination questions that week, and I did. Looking back, I'm honestly really amazed how I did it, how I managed to do it. But maybe because I was very anxious at that time, I was very pressured during the first week. That made me do it, no, the anxiety. So I completed 12 subjects with 10 items each and average 200 practice questions daily at that time without any study hours. I did not have any study hours at this time. I only had pretest because I really wanted to assess myself, like where I am at during the first week of review season for me to have some point of comparison in the succeeding week. So I really did not study during the first week. I just did pretest. I just did practice questions. I did not study because what's the point? There are pretests, diba? So why study? Why study? They are meant to assess where you at right now during your early days of review. So why study? You can study actually other topics different from what you are answering, but I just did not study because I was already planning to finish everything within that week. I did not have time also to study. And at that time, as you can see here, at 6 p.m., I already had my dinner na and rested because the, taking exams like at least 200 items per day, taking it seriously is actually very taxing. So I just rested for like 6 p.m. I have dinner and rested and then sleep now for 9 and then answer again tomorrow. That's what I did during the first week. That's what I did. But I was, mind you, I ended my day early, but it was very kapoy. It was very what's kapoy in Tagalog? It was very, I'm not really good with Tagalog. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it was very tiring. It was very exhausting. So, yeah. Okay. So that's what I did during the first week, no? I really finished 1,200 practice questions within that week. And my sole focus again was on pretest that week because it was my way of assessing where I needed to improve during the review season and identifying my strengths and weaknesses. So that's what I did. So during the same week, I want to share to you guys that I developed a score tracking system to assess my performance as well. So once I finished all the pretests, I reviewed my scores and I identified my weakest areas. So at this time, as you can see here on the screen, my weakest was fundamentals. I only had 66 over 100, a score of 66 over 100 at that time. And also peri-op, nursing, operative, I was also the weakest. Only 70 over 100 at that time. But at this time, I wasn't really worried about peri-op because I knew that you can study it per system because there are surgical procedures per system and it's already also included under Fonda. So I wasn't really worried about that. And also what made me not so worried about peri-op is that I just graduated nursing. I just graduated BSN and one of our last subjects during third year to fourth year was peri-op, was perioperative nursing. So I wasn't really worried about reviewing the concepts and grasping them easier. I was really worried, however, with fundamentals. Why? Because it's such a broad subject. Plus, since we were pandemic babies, we learned funda virtually, which made it extra challenging. So I focused on studying funda today. As you can see here, I finished everything on Friday. And then I started reviewing my weaknesses and strengths on Saturday. So I found out that I was weakest with Fonda, so I studied Fonda. And that time, the only study material I had for Fonda was Carl Balita's Fonda. And I was somehow, I don't think I can recommend the Fonda one because there are typos, it's not really accurate, but I do recommend the jurisprudence part of the Carl Balita one. I also recommend the CHN. The Fonda part, I would recommend really Cozier. And at the time, I was not introduced to Cozier yet. So, I had to use what I have or what I know. So, I used the Carl Balita. And it's okay naman, you can research about, if you're doubting about certain information, you can just research about it naman. So, no biggie. And then, and on that day, while I was reviewing, diba, I found out that I was weak with peri-op. But then I wasn't really worried about it. So what I studied on that day was just funda and jurisprudence because I'm very weak with Palmar. To be honest, I'm really weak with Palmar during the beginning of our review season and during our enhancement review program. I was very weak with Palmar, especially research and ethics, nursing, jurisprudence. I'm really weak. Leadership and management, I'm really weak with that. So, I decided to just study jurisprudence at that time because I was very weak with it. Okay? So that's what I did during Saturday, and then on Sundays I just did practice questions. I did say it at that time. Why? Because when I was answering the pretest for CHN, my pretest score actually was very high. It was, I think it was 92. Pero I have an explanation why I had 92 out of 100 at that time. Because during the last days of college, we had our oral revalida, and we had our quiz bowls. Oh, not quiz bowl, just one quiz bowl. So I really studied CHN at that time. And then I was already introduced or exposed to the questions we had in the pretest during our oral revalida and during our quiz ball. So I wasn't really happy with my score, if even if it was big, because what happened during this time was that I actually memorized the correct scores during my previous exposure of the questions during oral revalida and during our quiz ball. So I actually memorized the answer. So I wasn't able to assess if I really don't know the concepts. And then I realized, well, while answering CHN, that you really have to read in order for you to answer CHN questions. No, because there are like the questions in CHN, you really have to know specific information about the Philippine government, Philippine laws, Philippine culture, and things like that. So I really focused not just here on the Sunday, no, on this on the first week, but I actually focused studying my first month of review season. I focused that on studying CHN. I read the CHN White Book religiously at that on those days, on those first months of our review season. And because one thing manggod I learned about CHN is that, well, test taking strategies really can help in CHN. Nini can teach you if you're enrolled in SLRC, of those test taking strategies. They can only get you so far, I realized, because you cannot confidently answer CHN questions without actually studying and reading the concepts, especially as I mentioned before, the specifics like Philippine health programs, Philippine laws. So CHN, I would say, requires a significant amount of reading and understanding because of the essential and detailed information you really need to know. And it was very worth it because my highest score during the PNLE was actually CHN. So you just have to read, actually read, and you read it many times. You do Anki flashcards for repetitions for you to really memorize the concepts in CHM. Then you'll be good enough for the PNLE actually. Okay, so where am I? Okay, I was talking about CHN, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So I think that's all you need to know about my first week um, of review season. Now let's move on to my second week of review season. Okay. Okay, just the same lang from Monday to Saturday. I have the same routine when it comes to my daily routine. Let's move on directly to the study schedule. Okay. So by the second week, our lecture schedule had already been established, which I was really happy about because that's what I've been looking forward to. So let me go directly to my study schedule here. Okay, during that week, again, I mentioned my daily routine with the first week remained the same with the second week. The study schedule changed. Okay. I start my study hours at 7 a.m. So during lectures, I already consider the time spent in lectures. As I mentioned before, I want to highlight and I want to again repeat this. I use my lecture hours as part of my study hours already. So that's why it's easier for me again to use up my 8 hours of studying, because I have a minimum of 8 hours right daily of studying and a maximum of 12 hours. It's very easy for me to reach 8 hours because I use that time up for lectures, because it's a kind of like a study technique called passive listening. And because it's just passive listening, it's not really reliable. So what I did is that I used another study technique together with passive listening. That's why I do something during lectures in order for me to actually actively learn. That's what I did. And then I will explain that later, no? Okay. So from 7 a.m., as you can see here, to 12 noon, we have our lectures, and then that counts as study time. Technically, our lecture starts at 8 a.m. as I mentioned before, but I usually start studying at 7 a.m. Just a way to warm my brain up before the actual lecture begins. And I usually do practice questions at the time, Anki flashcards, and things like that. So, and then this continues until 5 p.m. our lecture. So we have 7 to 12 and then 1 to 5. That's usually the schedule of our lectures with an hour lunch break in between. So after 5 p.m. I do an hour break for dinner and stuff, for getting home, and then I start studying again at 6 p.m. And then I'll share my study flow later to for you to know how I study every day. But to give you an overview lang of what I do after lectures and dinner, no, I review my notes from the lecture using a specific method and tool. I usually do not read my notes again, but I use a tool called Anki to review my notes. And one way to explain that is I will present in the screen later, is that one way to do that is whenever I'm doing lecture, I use Manggod Google Docs. I just type um, the my notes. I type my notes because I'm not really good with writing. I use handwritten notes before during our enhancement period. But what happened is that when I reviewed my notes, I couldn't really understand my handwriting, so I switched to Google Docs. That's just the same with iPad. If I use the pencil, I really don't understand my handwriting. I'm so sorry. So I just use Google Docs. So in order for me to make bawi, I split my screen into two. The other side is Google Docs and the other side is my Anki app. So whatever I listen from the lecturer, whatever notes I take down, I write that in the Google Docs, and important information I write down in the Anki cards. It's actually both ways. Whatever is in my Google Doc notes are all in my Anki flashcards. I make sure of that to have something in comparison, to have something to review from. What I do is that to make learning more active, I use my own words when it comes to making Anki flashcards during lectures. So that's what I do. I'll explain more later during my explaining of the study techniques. Huh? Okay. Okay. Where am I? Okay, I was talking about lectures, right? So, okay, I was talking about what I do after I get home, after I do dinner. Okay, I review my notes from the previous lecture, the lecture I had on that day. That's what I do. I review the notes immediately through Anki flashcards. So I make sure na I review it immediately after the lecture. And then once I'm done with that, actually I really get bored with using Anki flashcards easily. So I really could not finish one set of Anki flashcards on that lecture. Most of the time I do not finish, especially when there's a lot of flashcards. So I usually do not finish. And what I just do is I reschedule it in a different time. So I actually do not skip flashcards. I just reschedule because I still have time tomorrow morning, like the 7 to 8 a.m. That's when I review. That's when I finish reviewing all the Anki flashcards. And then when I get tired with Anki flashcards, I move on to practice questions. And what do I do during practice questions? What topics do I choose? I choose the same topics or similar topics from our lecture earlier. So it has to be under the same NP. So for example, we had the subject CHN, and then we were talking about FSHIS on the earlier vital statistics. So what I study when it comes to the practice questions in the evening will be about CHN. It doesn't matter if it's FSHIS or if it's about vital statistics or epidemiology. It doesn't matter as long as it is within the same NP. I really want some continuity and uniformity. That's why I do that. I do not skip to another topic. So it has to be within the same NP when it comes to doing practice questions in the evening. So how many practice questions do I finish daily? no, during lecture proper, because in the first week I finished actually an average of 200 man, but that's without me studying anything, not reading anything, not attending lectures. What how many practice questions do I have daily on lecture days? Actually, the minimum actually is 10, and that's usually every day, 10 only, or 10 to 15, or 10 to 20. That's just it. Why? Because I get too tired na, and I don't want to study with my brain being foggy, because I won't just remember that on the next day. So what I do to make bawi with the minimum amount of practice questions I had on that night is to actually immediately check your answers. Like, you answer 10 questions on that night. So you answer 10 questions, you immediately check your answers, and then you do rationalization. And when you do rationalization, do not just read the rationalization given on your material. You actually explain yourself. You understand the rationalization yourself, and you explain yourself. And this is not just about rationalizing, the concepts, but this is also including the test taking strategies being used on that particular question. So that's how you do it. That's how you retain more information to actually understand it. So that's the Feynman technique actually, which I'll be explaining later. Okay, so that's it. That's it for my second week of lecture. So what I did, we had our CHN lecture, and then review CHN lecture at night. What I explained earlier about Anki and practice questions. What do I do during rationalization? Actually, in our review center, they will schedule rationalizations of post-test, pre-test, mock boards. That's what they do. And sometimes, what I do is that I sometimes make my own schedule for rationalization. I rationalize myself, but that actually takes a lot of time. That's why I rely na lang sa I also rely on the rationalization they schedule, because I can save more time with that. So what I do during rationalization is that the same I look at the material, the test material, the test paper. Is it called the test paper? Yeah, it's called the test paper. Do Google Docs for the notes for the rationalization, and then same Anki. And on at that night, I review my ration notes through Anki. I do practice questions related to the topic that we rationalized earlier. And usually our rationalization would just be half day. So I use the remaining day to rationalize myself, actually, just to imagine myself as a rationalizer, also trying to discuss in front of my students. That's the Feynman technique, which I'll be explaining later again. Okay, that's what I did during the second week. Now let me move on to the to our this is actually during our first mock boards. I'll be sharing to you guys what I do during our mock boards. First, I just want to highlight that during mock boards, let's go back to my daily routine. Okay. You have to treat it as your actual board exam. Like mock boards itself, regardless of what review center you enroll in and what kind of discipline they give you, you have to really discipline yourself that you consider your mock boards as your PNLE, like the actual PNLE. Like, set that on your mind that, okay, this is the actual PNLE na. Imagine yourself, you're already in the actual board examination during mock boards, ha. Okay, so prepare the same way you would for the actual board exam. Experience the mild anxiety as you would during the real exam, and answer the test the same way, especially when it comes to the time management, because you only have 2 hours for 1 NP. So 1 NP is 100 items, and you only have 2 hours to finish that. Okay, so each subject or NP consists of 100 items, and you have only 2 hours to finish per subject. So, and one thing I also want to highlight about your daily schedule during mock boards, now if you're really worried how my day goes like, and you want to compare it with yours, I must say it's really stressful. It really is stressful. For me at the time, it really is stressful, because I considered it as the actual board exam na. And then I want to highlight the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, no, during your preparation on your examinations while you're still in review. According to the theory, it's essential to put off basic needs. I mean, it's not essential actually. It's actually considered. It's a consideration in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs that you can actually put off your basic needs like eating or whatever, self-care. You can put it off temporarily and postpone them until such time that you have completed your higher level of functions, which is actually studying and preparing or actually taking the examination. So you can actually put off. What I usually do is, what I usually put off is breakfast, because I when I get anxious, I always have an upset stomach. That's why I usually put off breakfast during big examinations, because it would not do me good if I have breakfast. No, what I do is I just bring enough food that when the stimulation wears off, my sympathetic stimulation wears off, and then I get really 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 hungry, I would have food to eat. That's what I do. But I usually do not take breakfast during examinations, because my stomach would get upset easily, Jude. So that's why that is why I'm telling na you don't really have to worry, because it's actually your body is designed that way. You can actually put off basic needs, basic physiological needs that you can put off. You can postpone that temporarily. After you can go back to it after doing the higher level function that you need to finish, which is the exam. So you don't really have to worry. You need not to stress yourself about it. Me, I put off exercise during examination. I'm not sure if it's a good thing, but it works for me. Some people do not put off their exercise during examination. I usually put off shower as well. But this just a disclaimer, it's the activity of showering that I put off, but I do basic hygiene on that day. I just don't shower. Okay. I wash things that needs to be washed. I just don't shower because you know I get stressed easily, and that's just what I want to share, no. Okay. Where am I? Okay. So this is a schedule of our, this is just an example of our mock boards. And after more mock boards, I always do score tracking. So you can see my score tracking here in our first mock boards during the review season. So I also create a checklist for specific topics where I am weakest at. So how do I go about that? Let me show you my table on how I list down the topics I'm weakest in after each test, and how I track these topics to ensure I work on them. Okay, so this is actually look at my tracking score. This is my score during our first mock boards, and then how do I track my weaknesses? I have it here. Okay. Okay, so this is how I do it, ha. Every time I rationalize a test, whether in our review center or through a DIY approach, I divide the test by sets of 5 questions. Okay, according to the situation, after rationalizing each set of 5 questions, I determine my score out of 5 and identify the main topic of the situation, because that would be it would depend on what score I have on that one situation, and the main topic would either become my weakness or strength. So this is what I put here. So all the red ones are my weaknesses. So this is for NP2. Now look, I don't have a green one. So this is how I do it. No, I list down my weaknesses. How do I the one I am explaining before, how do I do that? This is how I do it. Just to give you a presentation lang on how I do it. Wait. Okay, I'll use notability. Oops, sorry. Wait. Okay. Like for example, no. Okay. For example, this is situation number 1. I will not write a situation lang ha because I've not prepared manggod. I'm sorry. So, situation 1, this is NP1, for example. So, this is NP1. Now, look at my agi. It's very bati. Okay. And, NP1, diba? So, the situation is about records and reports. Okay. Records and reports. So that is the situation. That's situation 1. And under those situations, there are 5 questions related to that situation. So for example, this is number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3. This is number 4. And this is number 5. So usually, during our mock boards, our tests, the zip grade that we use for mock boards will be checked before the schedule for the rationalization. So what we usually have are test scores already with the answer key. So you can actually rationalize on your own based on the answer key already provided. So that's what I usually do after mock boards na I rationalize on my own. I will not wait for the schedule na because I really want to assess my weaknesses and strengths. So this is what I do. For example, the situation is about records and reports. Like that. And then, this is my, for example, my answer is, this is for shading man, pero I'll just write my answer like for A, B, D, C, and D. So, I got, for example, I got 4 wrongs and only 1 check. So, I'll score that as 1/5 already. Let's make that red. 1/5. So that's what I do every rationalization. I score every 5 items and then I identify what is the main topic in this situation. So if it's record and reports and it's under NP1, that's most likely FSHIS. Okay. So you have to have also a category in your scoring. So for me, what I do is that 4 to 5 is the passing score. And 1 to 3/5, that's 4 to 5/5, and 1 to 3/5 are failed scores. So you need to actually have 4 to 5 scores per situation in order for you to actually pass the 75%. That's what I've observed. Like, mostly of your scores per situation must be 4 or 5 for you to be able to pass the 100 item. And the passing score is 75. Okay, raw score. That's already raw score. And one thing I also want to highlight, if you really want to ace your board exam, as early as your review season, your passing score, your standard for your passing score must be a raw score of 75. Do not think about the curving ball or anything like that. Do not think about that. Just set your passing score as the raw score 75 and you'll do great. 50 and above are already actually good scores na. It's actually, you have a higher chance of actually passing and even topping the board exam on those scores per NPs, 50, 60, 70. But just to be safe, just make 75 as your raw passing score. Do not think about any curve, something like that you have a higher chance of increasing your scores from the raw score. Just think about 75 being the passing score during review season. Do not be complacent. That's what I'm telling you. So again, going back here, what I do is that I score every situation, and if my score in that situation is between 1 to 3/5, that's already failed and that's already considered as my weakness. That's actually not FSHIS. That's actually field health. FHSIS. I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Oh. Okay. FHSIS. Field health. Okay. Yep. So that's how I keep track of my weaknesses. And then I list that down here as red. I think I listed red. FHSIS here red. I'm not sure, but I really listed that here because that was my main enemy during review season. I really studied on that na. Here you go. Okay. FHSIS. It I was not able to place that here, but that's how I do it. The orange one, the yellow one, I'm not really sure if I'm good at it or not. So I just place them as yellow or orange, just like the stoplight. Okay. So that's what I do when it comes to tracking down my weaknesses, no? So that's pretty much for my daily schedule, no? I started with the first week with just being focused on pretest, and then on the second week, which reflects the succeeding weeks na, because our schedules for our lectures have already been established, and then I showed you my schedule during rationalization and examinations. Now I'm going to show you a suggestion lang for those who are opting to who opted to self-review, who did not enroll in a review center. This is just like a suggestion lang from me. For me, I think this is what I would do if I self-review like that. This is the schedule that I would follow if I self-reviewed, if I did not enroll in a review center. Okay. So, for example, on Monday and Tuesday, you'll focus more on NP1 because NP1 is divided into two. Like, it's divided into two. You have your communicable diseases and you have the CHN proper. CHN proper includes na everything about family, school health nursing, about occupational health nursing, that covers na everything. But usually communicable diseases is a different focus because it's also very broad. No, it's a very broad part of NP1. So you should separate that on different days. That's why I suggest here that when you do self-review, and if you want that in a week you are able to study all concepts from NP1 to NP2, this is gonna be your suggested schedule. Okay, so for Monday and Tuesday, you'll focus more on NP1. So on Monday, about CHN, and on Tuesday, you move to communicable disease. So on Wednesday, you focus on MCN, and on Thursday, you focus on medical surgical, as well as in Friday, you also focus on medical surgical. And as you can see, this is the schedule you have during your board examination because it's NP1, NP2, NP3, and on the next day, it's NP4 and NP5. NP3, NP4, and NP5 are about fundamentals in nursing and medical surgical in nursing, and psychiatric in nursing, and perioperative nursing. That's all three, but you can just consider those either fundamentals or MS, and then psych. That's it. That's for NP3, NP4, and NP5 na. You can just squeeze those subjects up in just 2 days of studying per week. And then on Saturday, do your summative. Saturday and Sunday, actually do your summative test, or do your mock boards. No, for Saturday you can do NP1, NP2, NP3, and for Sunday you can do NP4 and 5. But if you want to rest on Sunday, you can compact all those summative tests within Saturday. You do summative NP1, NP2, NP3, NP4, and NP5. I have set a schedule for you here for that if you opt for that schedule. But if you want to divide it into 2 days, your summative test or mock boards, you can take your summative test for NP4 and NP5 on Sunday here in the screen. Okay, this is just a suggestion lang ha. And also, I did not really focus on this one because there's already another video of this one from the previous top-notcher. Her name is Laika Uy. She was the top 9 from Velas, May 2024. So she has a really good explanation on this schedule for you guys to follow, and she also prepared a checklist per day. So I think that's what she did. That's why she has a checklist already. But I also prepared a checklist, but I have not finished it yet. Okay, I think you should also watch her video. I will just, I think, link. I don't know how to link a video anywhere, but I will try to find a way to link her video in this video, maybe on the description box or in the comments. Okay, it's really a nice video, I tell you. I actually watched that video mid review season. That's why I wasn't able to change my schedule just like hers. I really wanted to have that schedule, but I could not really fit it into my schedule because we already have our lectures. We already have a schedule set by our review center, and I followed that schedule, and it actually worked for me. So I just had the idea to share it because it's really a good idea. It makes good sense. Another suggestion I would make is, instead of making it daily, you do it weekly. What I mean is that, di ba, for NP1, you do it Monday, Tuesday. And this next schedule is you do it weekly. For week 1, you do NP1 CHN. On week 2, you do NP1 communicable diseases. And week 3, you do what's that, MCN. On week 4 and 5, you do MS, or you can extend to week 6 because you want to do NP3, NP4, NP5. And then after you have finished all the NPs individually per week, you can have your own mock boards on the next week. Actually, you can make that schedule, as you can see here. No, after you finish week 5 or maybe week 6, because you want to individually include NP1 on week 4, NP4 on week 5, NP5 on week 6. Then on week 7, you do 2 days of mock boards, NP1, NP2, NP3 on the first day, NP4, NP5 on the second day, and then you do your own rationalization for your own mock boards. That's it. That's a good idea if you do self-review. Okay? So I think that's just my suggestion, no? Now my screen is half into two na. Okay, sorry. Okay, so let's go now. Let's move to my study flow. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, let's move on na to my study flow. Okay. So this is the study routine that I actually follow daily during the review season, and I use a minimum of 4 study methods. That's the minimum, and sometimes it becomes 5, but the 5th one is actually very informal. It's for fun only. And okay, so first, I mentioned before, you have passive listening. Passive listening refers to my way of studying during lectures. Since I consider lecture time part of my study time, I make sure to maximize it. And the term passive listening may seem may sound negative, but it's actually not. You can turn it into something active and positive. So what I do during passive listening, it's pretty simple. I listen to the lecturer, but whenever they ask questions or want us to finish their sentences or want us to guess something, to answer something, I always make sure that I participate actively. But what do I mean by that? I just participate. I just participate. Oh my God! I just participate actively by blurting out the answers that they want, the answers to the questions that they are asking, or the if they want to finish as their sentences, the next word for that sentence, like that. So I blurt out answers on my own. Even if I get wrong, it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't matter if they hear me or not, because I'm at the furthest side of the room, so the lecturer cannot really hear my it doesn't matter, it's even better if they don't hear you. If they don't know that you got the answer wrong, they eventually just say the right answer, as long as you're blurting it out, because you'll remember it even better if you blurt it out. It's the Feynman technique, like that. I don't think it's really the Feynman technique. I think it has another study technique, but it's part of the Feynman technique. It would tell you, blurting out would actually tell you na you actually understand. You actually understand it. So one way to also remember certain concepts is to blurt it out. So if your lecturer is asking you about something, you blurt your answer out. It's a better way of retaining the information. Okay, where am I na? Okay, so okay, so that's what I said. I blurt out answers even if they're wrong, and it doesn't matter if the lecturer hears me or not. What matters most is that I'm making passive listening into active learning by participating. The study technique of passive learning during lectures is actually very relevant, but it's not that promising. You have to partner it with other study techniques that are more active. That is why the next thing I'd be showing you is how I split my screen into two. Okay, I mentioned before na I split my screen into two during lectures. So let me get an example. Okay. I'll be choosing this one, I'll be showing you some of my notes. And you can screenshot it or not. Doesn't really matter. Anyway. Okay. That's my Anki. Neuro. It's my neuro, This is actually neuro, no? Yeah. N. N for neuro. This is actually what I do. Like that. So I make notes. Like for example, like that. I make notes here on this side. And then when there are relevant information here, I transfer that to my Anki, but I make sure that I'm using my own words. That's one way to make it active. That's one way of making your brain active during passive listening. Make your own words. If you want to write something, use your own words from your own understanding. That's one way to make it active. So that's what I did. That's how I made passive listening into active learning during lectures. Just as easy as that. Okay? Next, I engage in deep reading. I create a checklist of topics I want to read that day, and I read one topic at a time depending on my ability to read and comprehend. When do I stop? I stop when I can no longer understand. I stop when I can no longer focus on the topic, or I lose interest, or I get bored with the topic. And I do this every night, but make sure to use time wisely, because there are times that I go beyond 12 hours or really extend to 12 hours because I really get hooked into a topic that I'm studying, or get annoyed at why I'm not understanding it as easy as I should. So sometimes there are times like that na I really go beyond because I want to understand it more, but that's okay. That's not every day, man said. So but you just really have to use your time wisely. Know which topics are high yields, and know which topics you should be leaving out, or you should be rescheduling at a later time because they're not that important for the PNLE. I mean, you can study everything, but if you have the luxury of time to do so, but in cases like this, when you are reviewing already, you have to be selective of which topics you will study, right? You have to be smart about it. You have to know which are the high yield topics that you should be studying. Okay. So I choose topics carefully and select study materials like Saunders because it's more summarized. I only go to mother books. I only go to more comprehensive books when I really need to understand a topic. Like for example, I really need to understand asthma, things like that. I really need to understand this. For example, I want to understand osteoarthritis. I really don't understand this just by reading Saunders. I want to know more about it. Then I go to Brunner's. That's what I do. Or I really don't understand this the care for a patient with NGT. I don't know how to care for a patient with NGT. I don't know how to feed. And then when I read Saunders, I really could not comprehend. I want more information. Then I go to Cosiers. But you have to be very selective. Remember, NGT are very high yield, so that's why I went to Cosiers. Osteoarthritis is also high yield, that's why I went to Brunner's because I want to understand it more. But you have to be wise about it. Okay? And then use the internet actually. Research, read journals, argue with ChatGPT. That's what I do to learn. I argue with ChatGPT, research, ask ChatGPT about things, and when I feel like they're wrong, I argue with them, and then things like that. Whatever floats your boat. Okay. So while I do deep reading, I read, I annotate, and after finishing a topic, I go back to my highlighted parts and turn them into Anki flashcards. That's what I do. It's like the same with lecture, but when I do deep reading, I read the whole topic, and then when I'm done reading the whole topic, I go back to what I annotated, what I highlighted, and make flashcards out of them if I have the luxury of time. But sometimes if I don't finish it, I just write it in my checklist and then do it some other time. Okay? And then after that, I do practice questions. So let's do Anki flashcards first. So I reviewed the ones I created for Anki flashcards that day from both the lecture and the deep reading, as I mentioned. And it does not matter if I finish again all the flashcards for today. The key is what I reviewed some concepts. The key is that I reviewed some concepts. If I don't finish, I list the remaining cards in my backlogs and schedule another time to review them. And when it comes to reviewing Anki cards, I don't set a specific number to complete it daily. If I feel like I've had enough for the day, I stop. On average, I review at least 100 flashcards per day. That includes the 7 to 8 a.m. Flashcards reviewing, and then the 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. review. So that's on average 100 flashcards. I don't, sometimes there are days na I don't even reach 100. So again, flashcards bore me out actually. They're very pretty much boring, no? You're just going to click it. It's pretty much boring. Actually, what's more fun are practice questions because you can actually rationalize along the way. You can actually explain, see some choices. In Anki flashcards, it's actually not that fun. You really have to discipline yourself to do Anki flashcards, to review your flashcards, the flashcards that you have bought, the flashcards that you have made, because most of the time we don't get to do that. I'm guilty of that I actually bought a set of flashcards from another top notcher and I wasn't really able to review all her Anki cards, but actually it was very useful because her Anki flashcards were really complete. And then what I did, it became my browser when I don't have data during review. Like, you can actually search on your Anki app, search some concepts, some keywords, and then it would just pop out, and then you would be redirected to some concepts related to that keyword. And actually became my browser at the time. Together with my friend, we laughed all the time because I don't have data all the time, and I purposely don't have data. I made sure to not have data at that time because I don't want to get distracted with messenger stuff. And so I purposely not have data at that time. So what I use for browsing and stuff, for terms that I don't really know, I'm not really familiar, I do Anki, and the flashcards I bought from that top notcher really helped me, as well as the flashcards I made. That was fun. Okay, where am I? Okay, then that's it for Anki flashcards. So Anki flashcards would help you in two ways. I've presented it here. Anki for active learning, which involves actively engaging with the material by writing down key information. You're actually doing yourself a favor when you do Anki, because it's not just retrieval practice. Actually, when you make Anki, there are a lot of it's not just active recall, it's not just spaced repetition. You're actually doing Feynman technique when you make Anki cards, because especially when you use your own words, you don't just copy from your notes or whatever. When you use your words, your own words, you're actually training your brain to actually say something from your own understanding in a much easier way. Because Anki, you cannot really put very long paragraphs in Anki. You have to summarize it, and if you can do that with your own words, like topics in Anki, like certain concepts, if you can do that, you're already doing the Feynman technique, and that's already active learning. That's not just spaced repetition, that's not just active recall, but that's also Feynman technique, which I'll explain later. It's a study technique. And then I work on practice questions. The same with Anki, practice questions. You're hitting two birds in one stone with practice questions. It's both a retrieval practice and it's also active learning, because in practice questions, it's not just retrieving something from the options, but when you do rationalization with it, when you do your own rationalization and you discuss the answers with your classmates, with your boyfriend or whatever, or with yourself, you're actually doing, again, active learning through Feynman technique. You're blurting out the explanation, you're trying to understand why is that the answer, you're trying to understand why it's not the answer, things like that. So that's the practice questions. It would really help you a lot. And then what I do next in my how do you call this one, study flow, is group discussion. It's one way of also a form of active learning. It's a form of using Feynman technique. You can do that through group discussions. But what I made sure with group discussions is that I make it very informal. Like, it's my way of bonding with my friends, because the review season is very different from college. You don't really have a formal group to study with or to work with, and just so happens that in nursing you have an RLE group which stays from first year to fourth year of your nursing school, and you really get to bond together. You become very close to one another. That's why we have that kind of bond during the review season, in which we eat our lunch and then they just discuss about the answer, or even argue like a bunch of weirdos arguing about a specific concept, and the other one is telling they're correct, the other one is also refusing to admit that they're wrong, things like that. It's a fun way to learn about things, no, because there are information that your friends fully understand that you don't, and they share that with you, and there are also topics that you fully understand that they don't, and they share and you share that with them. So you share each other's information, and it would add up and add up and add up, and it would really help you with the board exam. But make it in a informal way. Make it your bonding time. Make it fun, no, to lessen the stress, to lessen the burden, and somehow actually arguing with your friends is actually a little bit fun. It's kind of our love language at that time. So yeah, okay, that's one way. If you have that kind of connection with your friends, then you're very lucky. Okay, so how do I choose the questions? I have here how I list down my checklist for the topics, the practice questions, and the flashcards I want to finish in a day. So can you see that? Red are the ones that I have not done, and the green are the ones that I finish. Okay. I do not really stress myself when it comes to finishing my backlogs, because I can always find time. Okay, that's how I organize things. Okay. And then let's move on to the study techniques that I use. So I used three main techniques for the majority of the review season. What I love the most was actually the Feynman technique, because it gives you the sense of gratification when you realize you're capable really of I'm capable Monday of turning a difficult topic into a simple explanation. I'm capable of that. So it's a form of gratification. It's a form of a satisfaction. So, and then using the Feynman technique is quite easy. It has a complex term, no. Feynman is a famous physician of physicist ba? I forgot. But what I do is just choose the topic that I'm interested in, whatever the topic is, and then read about it deeply as I can through the mother books or through summarized books, and then try to teach it to someone. And in my case, since I was mostly alone during my review season, I chose to be alone because I can focus more if I'm alone. I imagine myself as a lecturer here. I sit down here, I study. This is my study table here. This is my study area. So I usually sit down here every night, trying to explain to someone a certain concept, trying to rationalize practice questions. That's what I do. That's how I do Feynman technique. And what's good about the Feynman technique is that you won't even realize that you're actually using the Feynman technique already. And they say actually the original definition or description of Feynman technique is you are explaining a complex topic to a child, and you're explaining it by explaining it in a simpler way that a child can understand. But me, I actually modified it. I did not imagine explaining it to a child. I imagine explaining it to a PNLE taker like me. I imagine myself as a well-known lecturer, a well-known professor teaching a student. That's what I did, because if I teach a child, if I imagine myself to teach a child, then the concepts that I would be engraving in mind are in a language that a child can understand, which is not the language being used in PNLE. The language being used in PNLE is that of a person who finished BSN, who already has the background in nursing, but with the basic things. So I imagine myself teaching as a professor, teaching a PNLE taker, or as I imagine myself teaching someone like me. That's what I do. That's what I did during the review season. I did not imagine teaching things to a child, because then I would be using a language that is foreign in the PNLE, because a child is not qualified to take the PNLE. So I imagine myself a professor teaching someone who is qualified to take the PNLE. I think that's it. That's the best way to explain it. And sometimes you do not even realize that you're using Feynman already. Okay, let's do active recall. Let's explain. Okay, I don't have air already. Active recall is as simple as retrieving information without rereading notes. So this is the very foundation of Anki, flashcards, Quizlets, and even practice questions. So that's why these tools are really time efficient during review season. It's because you don't always have to go over your notes again and again. You just review your flashcards and you're still actively learning the topics discussed during lectures. And remember, you're already in your review phase, and constantly reviewing your notes, the ones that you wrote down, would take more time, and you want to save time. You want to be time efficient. That's why you use tools like Anki, you use techniques like active recall to be time efficient. So unless of course it's your own strategy to do that, to review your own notes. I actually know a lecturer who did that. She just reviewed her notes over and over again, lecture notes over and over again, and she topped the board exam. That's her also way of strategizing things, and it worked for her. I think it would also work to some, but it did not work for me because I would just get anxious if I only had that resources. So I always go to other resources other than my notes. So that really worked for her, and she topped the board exam. We have different ways of, we have different ways of doing things. So you can choose what she did, because I also commend that one because it also makes sense. But you can also choose another way. No, you can choose my way. You can choose your own way. You can create your own way of doing things. That's it. So for spaced repetition, Anki is the best platform for that, I would really say, because of its algorithmic tracking and settings. Because you can actually choose, if the question is too difficult, then you can choose an option there, and then Anki will set the time when you should be repeating that item. And then Anki helps you decide when to revisit particular flashcards, as I mentioned, especially when you're having difficulty recalling them. So for spaced repetition, what I did was actively learning learn during lectures while passively reading and making Anki cards at the same time. Then I would try to review the Anki cards again on the same night of that lecture. And then depending on how much I struggled with the topics, I'd schedule a day to review those flashcards again, those concepts again. And as needed, I would also go back and read my notes. It's as simple as that. And then do practice questions again. That's spaced repetition. You repeatedly review your notes either through flashcards or through practice questions at increasing interval, and it also depends on the difficulty of that certain topic. Okay, you can actually research more about it. Okay, next, let's continue with my preparation before the review season and my preparation before the PNLE. I actually really divided the preparation before the review season and the preparation before the PNLE, because both the review season and the PNLE are very exhausting events, and they require a separate set of preparations. So the review season itself, it's very taxing, it's very exhausting. You really have to prepare for it. If you plan to review for 5 to 6 months, if you plan to review 3 to 4 months, or if you plan to review 1 to 2 months, then you have to really prepare yourself for that review time, because it's a different environment from college, from school. It really is a different environment, especially when you are preparing for something that would actually change your life, that would actually define somehow your future. Okay, so this is my preparation before the review season. So a month prior, actually, we graduated last May 31, 2024, and our schedule for the review, it would start June 25, 2024. So we only had 25 days of rest after our graduation and before our review starts. So at that time, my 25 day of rest and preparation was already deducted by 7 days, because I I had to do something within that span of time, something very important. I will not share it na lang here. So it from 25 days, it went from 25 days it went to 18 days of preparation and rest. So I really rested on those days. I actually did not travel. I was supposed to travel at that time. I canceled the other one, and the other one got postponed. So I intentionally postponed the other one after passing the boards na, because I want to make it more worth it. I want to really say na I really deserve that travel. So I postponed it. hopefully I hopefully no now it will, I will plan for it again. But then that's what I did. Some of my friends, they traveled really out of the country, out of town, which is really great for them. But for me, I feel like I at that time I felt like it would be better for me to just stay at home. So I really stayed at home. I made it I made my time more at home, and I made it as much as possible to just stay at home. I didn't want to go outside at that time. So I really stayed at home, watch my favorite sitcoms, watch my favorite anime shows, did what I did, do what I wanted to, ate what I wanted to eat, and yeah, and then a week before the exam, I went back to the city. I mean, a week before the review season would start, I went back to the city. I went back here, and then I cleaned my room. I actually rearranged everything, um, get rid of all the unnecessary things in the room, and then just change my setup for sleeping, my setup um for studying. I even changed the order of my closet, because at that time I really wanted to arrange my closet in a way that my clothes for the review would be planned already, because I don't want to spend my mornings. I don't want to spend my mornings thinking about what to wear. I don't want to waste my time on that. That's just me. That's just me. Others want to really want to dress up, because that's their way of relieving their anxiety. That's their way of decreasing their stress. For me, my way of relieving my anxiety is to reduce my time in choosing what clothes to wear. That's it. That's why I bought lots of clothes at that time. I really bought lots of clothes just for the review. Like the attire that I'm going to wear for the review is already preset na even before the review started. And then how they're arranged in my closet is also preset. I do not fold them. I made sure to just use hangers, just so that if I need to get them, I would just be able to get them easily. That's what I did for my clothes. And for the bags, I bought bags. I bought um, uh, new Tupperwares and new how do you call it one, tumbler, to prepare for the exam, to prepare for the review season, because I really, my mind at the time, review season is going to be taxing. Review season is going to be very exhausting. It's going to be different from college, and I'm going to do as much as possible. I'm going to do the things that I need to do to relieve my stress. So that's what I did. That's how I prepared for the for the review. And then also, I made all my schedules now via Google Sheets. I made the schedule I showed you before, the daily routine that I had. I made all of those. I prepared all my study materials, the ones that I need to install in my phone, the ones that I need to buy, things like that. I even had, before the review, no, I even had a video about what's in my bag for review. That's it. That's what I did for the review season a week prior. So prepare your study environment however you want to prepare it. Prepare your study materials and review starter packs. That's just my advice before preparing while preparing for the review season, before it starts, and then before the PNLE a month prior, you should lessen your time on deep reading na. You should by the time you should be confident now with the topics, not very confident, but confident enough that you know about the topics, you know enough about the topics. So what you need to focus on a month before the PNLE is to really practice questions. Do practice questions. If before the minimum is 10 daily, you should increase to 50 practice questions daily, even 100 practice questions daily. You strengthen your weaknesses, and then you polish your strengths. That's it. Do practice questions. That's how you strengthen your weaknesses, and that's also how you polish your strengths. Do practice questions, because what you'll be doing in the PNLE will be questions. The same MCQ questions that you practiced. That's the pattern already. Um, that's already how you would be viewing your test paper. How you'd be seeing your test paper on that day. The practice questions that you have practiced will be the same pattern, the same how you call that one? The same format, diba? So you really have to do practice questions because the PNLE are MCQ questions, things like that. So you have to work on your weaknesses, you have to work on your strengths as well. And then a week prior the board exam, you do practice questions, still continue doing that, and then you increase your number of practice questions per day. If you had 50 before, do 100 now, do 200 now. You can even extend to 500 if you can. And then refresh on test taking strategies. Really work on test taking strategies. Why? Because this is what I tell myself all the time. You really have you do not just need to study the concepts related to nursing. You also need to study the exam itself, how it is made and who made it, and you really have to know the patterns of the exam on which are the high yield questions, which are high yield topics which are really not high yield, things like that. You have to be wise. This is what I mean by being wise. You have to know the proponents of the exam. You have to know how they make questions, what their specialties are. You have to know patterns. You have to analyze the patterns from previous board examinations, from a very long time to the most recent one. You have to know the pattern. That's how you will be able to make bawi with the test taking strategies, um, than what you know about the concepts. Of course, you have to study concepts. You have to study those different concepts that you need to study. You have to really know the answers. You have to know the rationales why those are the answer for that question and why the other options are not the answer. You have to know that. But for you to be really wise, for you to have more chances of passing and even topping the board exam, you have to study the board exam itself. Okay? How it's written, how it's made, who are the proponents, and things like that. And then a day prior the board exam, rest and do the things that can relieve your anxiety, things that you know will keep you calm on the day of the exam. So what I did the day before the exam, I actually studied. Yeah, because it's just the same with my rest day. I would be more calm if I study. So I would be more anxious if I do not do anything, if I do not study at all, if I do not open something. I would be more anxious that in that way. So I studied, but how I studied is not, it's in a more calm way. It's not in a cramming way. I just went through with a summarized version of practice questions, watch videos on YouTube on how to ace the board exam, things like that. But I actually studied, but I made sure that I would have enough rest time a day before the first day of exam. On the second day of the exam, I did not really do well because I was really depressed with NP3. I was really sad with NP3 because I got most of the answers that I almost got wrong. I did my test taking strategies in answering those questions, but I um I was overwhelmed with how I was overthinking at that time, so I got the answers wrong and I was really sad about it. So in order for me to compensate, I actually studied until dawn, I think 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And I was very sleepy with NP4 now on the next day, so I really do not recommend what I did. On the second day of the exam, if you're too tired, then sleep. No? Even if you're not tired, even if you're really overthinking a lot, then sleep. If you want to study, do not go beyond 9 p.m. Just sleep, because on the next day you'll just be very exhausted from the previous day, and you'll be your body and mind will not be in the right condition na. You'd be just like me. Almost I was really sleepy na on NP4. That's why we had an hour and a half of rest in between NPs at that time. So after NP4 I really slept. I really did sleep before NP5. But that's what I did. I'm proud of what I did before the first day, but I'm really not proud of what I did on the second day na. That's just it. And then I think that's what I did before the review season and before the PNLE. Let's move on to the time management technique. Okay, so the first technique I use is the Pomodoro technique, so which is basically a way of studying in short bursts. So you start by working for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break, and then you gradually increase time over time. Just a confession, I'm usually not a Pomodoro person. I do not usually use this. I prefer to study for longer periods, John. I don't want any distraction, Manggod, because I would then lose my momentum. I prefer to study for longer periods with minimal breaks because it helps keep my momentum, as I mentioned, for studying going and intact. However, there were several times that I had to really rely on Pomodoro technique because I was feeling burnt out at that time, and I was really really wanted to procrastinate. So what I did is that I actually allot time for studying, but I did not allot specific time like the Pomodoro technique. What I did is that I read a topic, and when I get bored about the topic, what I do is I watch my favorite TV show, which was Big Bang Theory. And once I finish one episode of that TV show, I then read again. And then when I read again and then get bored with the topic, I watch again my favorite TV show. That's I remember doing that um one day when we did not really have any schedule for lecture on that day, and we were just um tasked to study on our own. I did that here at home because I was really feeling I don't have any motivation at that time. And usually I say that when you don't have any motivation, you rely on discipline, but sometimes you're really too burnt out to even discipline yourself. So you make considerations, you make exceptions for yourself. So that was one exception for me. Okay. Next is time blocking. This is the hallmark of my whole review season. What I showed you in my daily schedule and study schedule were all about time blocking already. I really relied on time blocking. And what else? The Eisenhower matrix. I didn't even know that this was the term until now that I researched about it. It's all about prioritizing your tasks accordingly. It's basically about prioritizing your tasks and sorting them by urgency and importance. So what you do is you focus on important and urgent tasks. So these tasks can be as simple as studying the topics you're weakest at first, and then you schedule not so urgent ones for later. And then my favorite time management technique other than time blocking is the Pareto principle. It's the 8 80-20 rule. Basically, what you do is you focus 20% of your task on studying topics that will yield 80% of the results. It's the simplest way of saying um, uh, choose high yield topics, and it's the simplest way of saying study smart, not harder, because you're reducing your task of deeply reading and studying topics to just 20%, but you're doing it such a way na it's time efficient. Even when you're just studying these topics, even when studying these topics is only 20% of your task daily, you're actually ensuring that you yield 80% of your results by choosing and focusing on high yield PNLE topics. Your lecturers will tell you which are high yield PNLE topics. You could also recognize yourself which are high yield PNLE topics by keeping yourself up to date with news about changes in the healthcare system or whatever. And then you can also see the pattern through your mock boards, through the patterns of previous board examination. That's why I mentioned before that when preparing for the board exam, you actually need to study the proponents of the exam and understand how the exam is made. Doing so would allow you to identify certain patterns and prioritize high yield topics and practice questions that will appear frequently in the exam. So that is the very essence of the Pareto principle. Choose high yield topics to study, study smarter, not harder. And I think that's pretty much it for everything. I'll be closing this presentation of mine with the study materials that I used during my review. Okay, for study materials I used, most of this are summarized materials already. You have, next please, Saunders And then next would be your Cozier for Funda. This is the white book Seichan. And this is the Maglaya's book for Seichan as well. This is actually not a summarized book. This is actually pretty much somehow a little bit baga. It's a little bit thick, but the information here is very comprehensive already. It's also well organized and well summarized in a way, but you still have to read more with this. And then this nursing review from Carbolite. I did not use this one. I used the ones that are more specific to Funda and Sage, and I did not use the others now with Psyche MS. I did not use it na because I relied more on Sanders when it comes to MS. Psyche, I relied on, actually I did not really rely on a certain book with Psyche. I did DSM-5 and also VDBEC, but I just relied on the lecture. The lecture was good enough for me for Psyche actually. For VDBEC, they have practice questions. That's one thing that's good about VDBEC. For DSM-5, they have the symptoms. Very specific, but our lecturer actually memorized those symptoms, so that was enough for me. The lecture was really enough for me for Psyche. And for Funda wasn't really accurate for me. I was disappointed with Funda in CBRC because there were typos. I don't like typos. I do. I'm someone who, yeah, I'm prone to typos, but when I see something with typos, I don't like na. But what I liked about the Funda thing was the jurisprudence one, the nursing ethics, the nursing act was attached there, the code of ethics was attached there. That's what I loved about it. That's why I used it a lot. And the community, I loved. It's well summarized. Next is practice questions. I use Saunders Coziers. Okay, Saunders Coziers. And this one, I bought this one from Shopee. You can actually buy a lot of this from Shopee. And then the mid-surge, the David's Q&A success series. So David actually Q&A has a lot of series. This one is for med-surg. I also have one for MCN, for pediatric, for pharma. I have for psychiat. Those were the ones I really use for practice questions because I'm very lazy when it comes to researching to internet. There are times when I get really lazy when researching for practice questions that I want to practice on in the internet. So I just use these Q&A banks. Okay, I bought them from online, and I actually sold them also online after the review, just so I can maintain my, what do you call this, my memory in my G drive, because I keep all my PDFs in my G drive. So here, this is what I'm selling. And then for deep reading, you have Sealy's for an ANAFE. And this is also a recommendation for those who are still in nursing school. Sealy's is a good book. You can use that from first year to fourth year. And Bronner's is the hallmark of medical surgical nursing. And Cozier's for Fonda. Microbiology, I suggest Burton's. And psychiatric, I suggest VDBEC and DSM-5. And for military, for MCN, always military the best. And then for pharma, I used this during the review when I wanted to clarify certain information about certain drugs. You have pharmacology for nurses, a pathophysiologic approach. And then YouTube channel, I only watch Ninja Nerd. Ninja Nerd, he uses the Feynman technique. He's very good at explaining certain concepts, like, for example, the clotting factors, things like that. And I think that's the end of my video. If you want to ask me questions, you can reach me on my Instagram account at Charimayc, or on my Facebook account, Charimay Nunez Cañazares. You can message me. You can also email me on my email, cañazarescharimaycnc at gmail.com. And you can also join my Telegram channel. The link is already on the screen. So that would be all. Thank you so much.